Remember that Naked Gun 33 and a third, a tribute to Leslie Nielsen and all the one-liners. That was a classic.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, that is something to too. And of course, you also talk about wrestling as well too, and of course, you also got some TV as well, and you also do some reviews too, like on the Matrix back from 1999. And tell us a little about that.
Yeah, we on the site we do a lot of entertainment articles. We have a lot of talented writers in the entertainment section. We have Nicole Husa, who you can find her on Twitter at Husa Muses on, and she does a lot of our movie reviews for reviews that just come out. You can find her reviews every Tuesday. And we have a very talented writer that actually has a podcast on our network as well, named Chris, who he does a lot of retro reviews, and he does a lot of streaming reviews, so things that you can find on Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, things like that. And The Matrix, 1999. 1999 was we're doing a series right now on the movies of 1999. That was definitely a benchmark year in American cinema. Everyone thought that the new Star Wars movie, The Phantom Menace, was going to be the big thing to come out that year, and no one really paid attention to The Matrix or The Sixth Sense or American Beauty or some of those movies until they had actually come out. But if you go through the list of movies from 1999, it's quite staggering how many classic movies came out that year.
That is amazing too. And off the top of your head, or I don't know if you have like a list in front of you, what do you consider the top 10 movies of all time when you've been doing your reviewing?
Oh, top 10 movies of all time. Wow,
Or your favorites, I should say.
that's a very subjective list, but I would have to put Jaws up there. I think that Jaws is a tremendous film, and it really is when Steven Spielberg started to come into his own. Obviously, he was a huge fan of Alfred Hitchcock growing up, and that's very evident in a lot of aspects of Jaws. So I would definitely put that, maybe not number one, but that's definitely on the list. Back to the Future is another personal favorite of mine. That's another. It's kind of just it's a perfect blend of comedy and science fiction and a incredibly charismatic actor in Michael J. Fox and a visionary director in Robert Zemeckis, and the script that Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale came up with was just like an airtight script. That's near a perfect movie in my opinion. Then I guess you've got to go The Godfather. You've got to go Goodfellas and Taxi Driver. I think Martin Scorsese is one of those guys that was just born to be a filmmaker. You look at his movies, and he does not make a bad film. He doesn't hit a home run every single time, but you can't find a film of his that isn't innovative or interesting in some way. You go to Quentin Tarantino, and speaking of '94, that's the year that we're in retro late. You've got to say Pulp Fiction. I think that's a movie that changed cinema in a lot of ways. To hear that kind of dialogue, spoken on screen, it was just, and the nonlinear storytelling, it was something that people hadn't seen before then, really. And I think a lot of kids today might not understand just how groundbreaking that movie was for the time that it came out. We're going past like the late '80s and early '90s of cinema, which produced some good movies for sure, but nothing like what we saw with Pulp Fiction. It just a very different kind of narrative and a very different kind of dialogue written on screen. Tarantino is an expert at dialogue and making it interesting and compelling in its own right. Let's see, we got 3 more to go.
Take your time. It's okay.
I would put let's No, I don't want to do that one. Um, the Matrix to me the Matrix to me would probably be up there. Um, that's that's another one that changed a lot of things. And unfortunately, when a movie like The Matrix comes out and as successful as it was, it invites a lot of imitators, and it can hurt the original movie in the long run with their they innovated the bullet time effects where you do that jump in the air and everything kind of stops, the camera spins around at 360 degrees and all that, and that's obviously been imitated time and time again. But when we saw it for the first time in 1999, it was something we had never seen before. It allowed them to shoot action scenes in a way that was very interesting and completely different from anything that we had seen previously. So I would definitely put that film up there. I think you have to put Citizen Kane up there. I know not a lot of people I talked to a lot of people that don't really love that movie. Even people that are students of film that recognize the innovations that Orson Welles was able to put in that film in the early 1940s. But I like the movie. Like just from story structure and a writing standpoint, I think it's a very entertaining film, let alone all the effects and the extras and everything that he did with that film. I mean, there's a scene where there's two characters talking about Charles Foster Kane, and he's dancing in the background, and you can see his reflection in the window between the two of them, signifying that he's always there, like, that he's in the ubiquitous presence and things like that. I mean, there's a shot where Orson Welles takes the camera, pans across the sky, goes through a glass ceiling, and then into a ballroom in 1941. I still have no idea how he pulled that shot off. So the things that he was able to do and the way he was able to change cinema, I think you absolutely have to put that film on the list. And then another one that I like a lot from more recent times is the movie Room with Brie Larson and Jonathan Tremblay, I think that's his name, the kid, where she plays a mother with her son that's locked in a room. If you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to ruin it for you. The basic premise is
don't worry about it. You can give a little bit of it. It's okay. So.
But yeah, the basic premise is they're in a room, and at one point they get out of the room. They're being put there for a reason by somebody, and then they get out of the room. And one of the things that I love about the movie is the way that the director uses visual storytelling in the film, which is something that we don't see as much anymore, unfortunately. But when we're first in the room, everything looks very expansive and large. We're looking at it from the boy's point of view. And when at some point towards the end of the movie they go back to see the room, and everything looks very small and cramped, and it really conveys the message of, this was this kid's whole world for a part of his life. And so obviously it looks large and expansive to him. And then after he's been out in the real world for a while and he goes back to it, he sees how cramped and decrepit it was. And that kind of visual storytelling is unfortunately not used as much as I think, it should be nowadays. Sometimes filmmakers tend to be a little derivative and dumb down some of their movies for the audience, which, I think they should give the audiences a little more credit. But, I would definitely put Room as one of my top 10.
That is amazing as well, too. And, of course, you cover the top 10 with all the innovations, the techniques that are being used. And some are mimicked, just like with the Matrix. I do agree. I thought it was one of the best. And then it was also mimicked with a bullet. Now, how about the bottom 10 for you in terms of movies, like the worst 10?
Okay, the worst 10 films ever. Well, one of the ones that I remember is I almost walked out of this movie, and I've never walked out of a movie in my life, but I was fairly young, and I was a fan of Stephen King, as was my sister. And my sister and I decided to go see the movie The Mangler, which was based on a short story by Stephen King. And we went to see it. It was pretty awful. A lot of the dialogue was mumbled for some reason. I don't know what exactly they were trying to accomplish there, but there were several people that had gone on dates to this film, and when we were walking out of the movie theater, I heard more than one guy apologize to the woman that he had taken to the film. So if that tells you anything, the Mangler is pretty bad. A lot of people, two that come to mind that a lot of people don't like are the Garbage Pail Kid movie, which was I'm pretty young when that came out, but that's another one I saw in the theater. And that was the first film that I saw that I said to myself, oh, movies can be bad.
And that was garbage, yes.
Yeah. At that point, my parents had usually had seen a movie before, or, they had pretty good taste in films. So a lot of the films that I saw were, objectively good movies. And this was a new movie that came out, and it was, it had a little hype behind it with the trading cards and everything. So, we went to see it, and I think I was probably maybe 7 or so. And yeah, it was the first movie that I said, oh, movies aren't always good, because this is terrible. So even as a 7-year-old, I could recognize how bad that film was. Howard the Duck is another one that, is sort of a famously bad film.
Oh, my gosh. It was painfully long. And then when it got to that part where it's like, okay, it's over, and all of a sudden the electric, like, come on, the duck is already roast.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, that film is an anomaly to me, because you have George Lucas producing the film, who was fresh off of Star Wars. You had Leah Thompson starring in the movie, and she was from Back to the Future.
Mm-hmm.
You even have a young Tim Robbins in the movie. You had the special effects being done by Industrial Light and Magic, which, obviously at the time George Lucas owns that, and had done all the effects for Star Wars. And I'm trying to think too, William Huck directed the movie, and he was, closely associated with George Lucas. He helped on American Graffiti and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. It was written by William Huck and Gloria Katz. I'm trying to remember what, William Huck had written American Graffiti with George Lucas. So they had all this talent behind this film, and yet what they produced was absolutely terrible. And it seemed like a film that didn't know what it wanted to be. It certainly wasn't for kids. I mean, there's an instance where you see duck nipples in the movie. There's a sequence where they're at a bathhouse for some reason, where Howard's taking a job. So it's definitely not for kids, but it's way too silly and over the top to be anywhere near for adults. So in the end, it's for no one.
I guess my question is, did it quack anybody up? That's the thing.
That joke is better than any joke in Howard's Duck.
Especially if you're a doctor, it's like you're trying to get better. It's like, just go to Dr. Quack and he'll make you feel better. So, oh my gosh. I think we're going to have to put a petition on, say, Howard the Duck 2. It's like, you better make a damn good movie this time. So get Quentin Tarantino on that one. So,
right?
Yeah. It's got to be shot in Detroit, too.
Yeah. It's funny, too. We did, in the episode of Massive Lacey that we did yesterday, since we were doing a sketch comedy show, I always try to get the Educating Mike segment to have something to do with the main thing that we're talking about. So I went for an anthology movie, and I did movie 43, which also has to be one of the worst films of all time.
Oh my God.